Jon Summers is the motoring historian. He was a company car thrashing technology sales rep that turned into a fairly inept sports bike rider. Hailing from California, he collects cars and bikes built with plenty of cheap and fast, and not much reliable. On his show, he gets together with various co hosts to talk about new and old cars, driving, motorbikes, motor racing, and motoring travel.
Good day, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. It's Jon Summers, the motoring historian, with his old school friend, Mark Gammy. How are you, Mark?
Cheers. Pretty good.
And today we have California Filipino friend, John Garcia, joining us. Say hello, John.
Hi, living the dream.
Yeah. So look, right, we're going to talk about motorcycles because John's mostly about motorcycles. Why don't we begin at the beginning with a cursed navy blue Yamaha XS650? Now, do you know this story, Mark Gammy?
No.
Right. Remember when I first moved to California, I knew one person, Mark Newton, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Newton said to me when I was first in California, what are you going to do about cars or, bikes or like getting around? And I was like, I don't know. And he went, oh, I've got this Yamaha XS650 if you want. It's just outside my shop. Now, looking back, right, that was ominous, right? Because what had happened was Mark had got pissed off with it, constantly draining the battery. But he didn't say that to me at the time, right? Mm-hmm. So I put a new battery on it. I put a new regulator rectifier on it. It's a parallel twin. It's like a Yamaha's version of a Triumph, right? And it was, Mark had got it from somebody at PG&E, and it was the bike for flat track. That's why he thought it was cool. But I'd come from Gixxers. So the fact that this thing could only do about 100 miles an hour flat out, and like at about 65 or certainly anywhere near 80, it felt like the world was going to end and you were going to be plucked off the back of it and it was going to fall apart. That I wasn't into older bikes then. So I not only was it cursed, but I actually didn't get that kind of bike then. So for me, the low point with this bike was I'd done all the battery and all the regulator rectifier on it. It was all ready to go. Mark and I were going to Fleet Week. So we rode from Santa Rosa, him on his ex-police Harley with the high bars and the tank shift and the foot clutch, right? And me on this XS, right? Well, Santa Rosa is about an hour and a half north of San Francisco, right? And you got the throttle wide open then. So the bike's generator or whatever it's charging with is going like the clappers, right? Heavy traffic across the Bay Bridge, across the Golden Gate, right? The splitting cars across the Golden Gate. When I came out of the gas, it died, right? And I bump started it, but it was clear it had no charge by the time like I was in San Francisco. And then I'm not sure, John, if you know this story. Marina Green, Marina Green, three-way intersection where great place to watch Fleet Week, right? Well, it had stalled more times, but, the long and short was I needed to kickstart it at a stop sign, three-way intersection. And I sort of electric started it into the intersection, but it died. And then I was trying to kickstart it, fell over, and it fell on me, which I know is kind of a signature move of mine. Being pinned by my own motorcycle and not being able to kickstart. But that's what happened. Well, Mark parked up and went to try and help me, but a policeman was like, you can't park there. So he was like, I'm not parking there. I'm trying to help my friend. So there's me under the bike, all the traffic stopped, and Mark virtually having a fist fight with the policeman. So after all of that, right, I just left it in the marina for about a week, being like, fuck you, right, basically. But, and then around about the same time, I won that Gixxer 750 in the SA competition, which is a whole separate story, right?
Mhm.
And that was why I was out of love with the XS. So John feels bad for the XS, which is parked up in the street at this time of year where it's pissing with rain all the time. And it was San Francisco, so it was on a hill. And the bike was being knocked over all the time. So he feels bad for it. He puts a note on it. And the note was like, you know, it was sort of halfway between a note saying, "Can I buy your bike? I like it." And a love letter, I would have said. Right? It was like there were a couple of paragraphs, you know. It was like properly, it was like a properly structured thing. So I read it and I sat on it for 24 hours, and I thought to myself, because I needed somewhere to store the Gixxer because it didn't have a garage, brand new bike, can't street park it. What am I going to do to? So then I thought, you know, any bloke who's written this kind of note is probably a trustworthy person. One, I just tell him I'll give him the XS, he can have it. Because I want rid of the fucking thing, he can have that if I can store my Gixxer with him. So that's what happened because and it turned out he lived just a couple of houses up the street, and
I think
that's how we became friends.
I think the note read, "That's not the way to take care of a bike." That's what I remember saying, sort of.
Yeah, but you expressed it in a much more gentle way.
Yeah.
You weren't like, "You buffoon."
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, dick nozzle, stop dropping your fucking bike on
This was lying on its bike in the street with a stream of rainbow-coloured gasoline and oil running down the street from it, which is what it was. It had mag wheels, didn't it? It had those black spoked mag wheels and broad handlebars. It was a good-looking bike, but my word, we what we think was that there was like a short circuit on the frame or something, which was why it eternally drained charge. So
I did ride it all the way to Laguna Seca to watch MotoGP.
yeah,
Remember that?
I remember it very well.
Yeah.
People tried to steal my Gixxer, sabotaging it, and I didn't get home until 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And what happened to you?
I got stuck on the side of the freeway. I had to work the next day, and this was, I think, it was around 1. Like I was stuck on the side of the freeway
With the XS.
With the XS, yeah.
Yeah.
It was dark, and I had to figure it out. Basically, I just had to wait. I had to wait it out because I didn't have a phone, right? Didn't have. Oh, probably did, but it's probably dead. The battery is probably dead. So I just waited. Then kickstarted it, and eventually it went, and I rode it home. But that took like 3 hours.
That's brutal, man.
Yeah. That was I wonder where it is now.
Yeah, you moved to Hawaii and left it.
I wonder which freeway it's at the side of today.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is you have a thing with Yamahas, huh? Getting stuck?
Well, also, the other thing was...
Just like that scooter?
No, you also, you notice the thing that I always say to people is if you look very closely at Dana's engagement ring, very closely into the heart of it, you will see a Yamaha R1, because that's what I was going to buy with that money. So I missed with the R1, and the XS was just the most pain in the arse motorcycle ever. But yeah, I won the Gixxer on account of having a Gixxer at home, so that's why the garage is full of Gixxers 15 years later. So let me move on to my next little topic on the list. And this is thoughts on electric bikes. And let's begin, John, with I did this open garage thing the other day. And one of the guys on the street was like, "Oh, you know, Scout Troop, another dad, built an electric bike. Can he come?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And then thinking he probably wouldn't show. Well, the guy did show, and I didn't have enough seats. And I didn't have enough beer and I'd not organised the evening very well.
No way.
But turns out this bloke competed in the Paris-Dakar, as you do. As you do, you know.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years, then he ran some teams, as you do, you know. Just because, you know. Did John and the other guy who rides, who's also got a home-built electric bike, did John and the other guy want to have a go on the electric bike? Now, I've not talked to you about it, but your expression was not dissimilar to when you inadvertently pulled a wheelie on a jigsaw in the street some years ago.
No, it was fine. It was very torquey and it was light.
So what was it?
What do you mean to what was it?
What was the bike? It was like a KTM.
It was a
wasn't
KTM
it?
125 SX. That had like I don't know what the size of the motor was, but it was big enough to like make it really torquey. It was snappy and it was clean. It was a clean ride.
Yeah. You know what Jason said about it? The other guy that rode it was like, reminded me how much I don't like knobbly tires on wet pavement.
Yeah.
He's focusing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want one. Like I really want one. And what he was saying was
what a bike like his or
no,
an
just
electric
make one,
bike?
all he
or
did was get the frame off the KTM 125.
Mm-hmm.
Went to a website and grabbed all the parts for that bike.
Well, so there's a website you can go to where it'll be like package up the right electric kit so you can electrify. Like I've got a TTR 125. Can you and then you buy
an
LS swap kit?
No, he had to fabricate the frame. If you have a welder, like you can easily do it, right? It's just the motor. The motor fits in the frame, and you kind of have grind it and just weld some mounts, and that's pretty much it.
Do you remember the website? I guess we could ask him,
didn't.
couldn't we?
Yeah.
That's typical for this. Like we talk about something and then can't point people, anybody unfortunate enough to be listening, can't point them to the right place to. Anyway, well, it's quite interesting. All right, favorite bike of the moment and why?
Favorite bike of the moment.
I don't mind starting. I'm going to start with the CRF 50 that we've recently bought for my boy, and how I just love the way it so wants to run. It's the easiest bike ever to be kick-started. He can kick-start it, and the way it runs, it's like a small dog with a lot of fight in them. It's like tiny, but it's a real motorcycle. Make no mistake, and I bloody love it. So that's my favorite.
For me, it's the DT250 converted into a cafe racer. It's raining today, but if it wasn't raining, I was going to ride it.
I when I see this bike, Gary, I always think of it as the meth special, right? Because why don't I leave it like that? And John, why don't you talk about where you got it from? And
so I went to Clear Lake. Clear Lake is the meth
we'll
capital.
put some pictures. We'll put some pictures.
Yeah. I'm looking for a picture, but
yeah.
So Clear Lake is the meth capital of California, right? And when I saw this posting in Clear Lake, I was like, I want this bike. I've seen this bike several times. I know who built it. I know the parts that are on it. And basically what ended up happening was this guy on Facebook was trying to sell it. And he wasn't able to sell it for about a year. And this guy in Clear Lake bought it, put it in his living room, and didn't really do anything until he had to move. But that's what he told me. And Clear Lake is about 2.5 hours away from San Francisco. And I felt like I was going to get robbed, right? Because the way this guy was giving me the address, it wasn't like a street address. It was like, we're going to meet here in this alley somewhere in like residential area / commercial area. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to drive 2.5 hours with my dog Remus. If anything goes south, he's not going to have to deal with me. He's going to have to deal with Remus also. But anyway, it turns out it was in his living room. We went to his house. It was in his living room. And I ended up buying it. And everything was new.
You looked at it right in his living room?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how we got it out.
Didn't you lose a girlfriend over a motorcycle in the living room?
I mean, that wasn't the exact reason for it. I mean, that was probably part of it. But that I wish I had that bike, to be honest with you.
Not the girlfriend,
I'd
the
still
bike.
I'd still have no, the girlfriend too. The girlfriend, yeah. I mean, that's probably a toss up. But that bike was a black bomber. It's like one of the first bikes that were imported to the U.S. in 64, 63.
Mm-hmm.
That was meant to compete with the British market, the black bomber as they called it. And it was the black bomber. It had the chrome tank sides, and the guy was moving to Japan, and he was selling all his collection. And I didn't have any space, and I asked Morgan. Morgan was the ex-girlfriend. I was like, "Can we put this in the living room?" She was like, "Absolutely not."
Dana was like, "No wonder, no wonder." Like, what on earth?
I mean, it's not unreasonable to ask. I mean,
yeah. It's only temporary.
I'm always reminded of that story when I hear about bikes in the living room. I'm always reminded of that story about a bloke who built a turbo Gixxer 750. And in the magazine interview, they said to him, "Why did you build a turbo? Why did you build a 750, not a 1000 or an 1100?" And he went, "Well, the 1000s or the 1100s, they'll get into the hallway, but they don't make it round the corner into the dining room. But the 750s, I can get them into the dining room. So that's why I built a 750.
Legit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good reason, right? Favorite rider? All-time favorite rider?
Me? Nicky Hayden.
All three of us.
Nicky Hayden.
Oh, good choice.
You know, I have a very, very memorable moment with Nicky Hayden.
You do?
Yeah, I was in a MotoGP Laguna Seca 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working at BMW at that time, and he had given me a pass. I thought it was a regular pass.
Who had given you a pass?
The general manager, Larry Sainz.
Okay.
At BMW. He's friends with Randy Mamola.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know, he has that connection. So I went with a group, right? It was like this super bike freak group, and I had a buddy that was there. It was like kind of cheesy for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they ride in the group, and they were all handing the tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came to me, I showed him the badge. It's like, "Oh, you go here."
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I'm in the lunchroom having lunch with the racers, and it was just like a really, really good experience. But anyway, we were back in the paddock, and Nicky was there, right? And to be honest, I was really, I still am a Rossi fan. I was waiting for Rossi in front of his trailer, and then Nicky comes, and this guy asked me to take a picture of him and Nicky. It's like, yeah, sure, And he was just standing there like, "Hey, do you want a picture?" And I was just like, he didn't say that. I'm just like, maybe that's what he was thinking, because the other guy was like, "Oh, yeah, Nicky, can I take a picture?" But super nice guy, just that small interaction.
Yeah.
He was just like, he took time. He was just very respectful.
Yeah. I just thought he was cool. He was always cool. Whenever you saw him interviewed, he was nice and smiling and chilled out. And that year he won the championship. I bet on him. I think he was like 11-2 or something like that odds at the start of the season. I was like, look, if he's going to win it, this is the year, because like the Honda was really good that year, and it's like he could do it this year. He's the number one rider there, or he's got a fair crack at the whip. And then he had a sort of period in the middle where he won about 4 races back to back. He was doing really well, and then there was that massive pile-up, wasn't it? Was that the one where someone went into the brake lever and the thing went end over end? There was a load of smashed up bikes and stuff at the start of that race. But either way,
was that 2005, 2006? That's when Rossi blew the engine.
Yeah, it was one. Yeah, exactly. So, but in the middle of the season, there was a reason why some people were out for a while, and I remember looking at it and thinking, well, hold on a sec. Hayden then put the next one on pole and won it, and then put the next one on pole and won it as well. And he was still 4-1. I was like, look, I like the guy. I'm betting on him. So I bet on him. And then he built up to about a 30-something point lead. And then Pedrosa took him off when he was leading. His fucking teammate took him off when he was leading, which meant he went.
Yeah, no, I remember that. He said, I've I've never felt pain like that in my entire life.
I was ready to kill that fucking little bastard.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And
Rossi, the last race,
Rossi
like 8
kicked
points
in.
behind, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I had 250 quid riding on him winning it. And I mean, I was a Rossi fan as well. Don't get me wrong, Rossi's cool. And I thought it was really nice the way that Rossi went round and gave him a pat on the back and said in the interview afterwards, look, if I've got to lose, it might as well be someone I really like. So, it was cool. But that was his year. And I mean, it was, it was really, he was a top guy. So just from a cool factor, I think he deserved it.
Yeah. Because Tony Elias knocked off Rossi. That's why he lost by 5 points.
Yeah. Because he got back on and was touring around, wasn't he? But yeah.
No, that was a good year.
Yeah. Was that the one that did Bayliss win the last race? Because he was chasing him down, and then afterwards he was like, I don't need to anymore. Like second or third or whatever it was is going to be fine.
Yeah.
He's in about 17th.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. He's a cool guy.
I was on holiday in Italy when the news came through about him having the accident that he had. And we were in a part of Italy where it was like in the hills and there were a lot of cyclists around. And the roads are really narrow. And I'd been just earlier in the day, it had occurred to me that if you were really meaning it on a downhill, and if somebody in a car placed themselves in the wrong way, you could just come around a corner and head on a car. And I don't know exactly what happened to Hayden, but I knew it was a cycling accident which took place in Italy whilst I was at that vacation. So yeah, Godspeed, Nicky Hayden. Gary McCoy would be the guy that I would draw attention to. I just remember because I was getting into MotoGP at the time when he was doing the 2 strokes and everyone else at the 4 strokes, and that was just an interesting, cool thing. And I think if we were going to go back in time, I'd talk about Jimmy Guthrie. I feel that Guthrie, all the photos of Guthrie, he looks like such a tough guy, and the sport was so tough. I feel like the 30s were interesting, right? Because the sport was still as tough almost as it had been in the 20s and the early years, but now the bikes actually could do 100 miles an hour and more, and you know what I mean. It was quite a thing. So yeah,
mine would be coincidentally this guy. I just got a T-shirt, a Joey Dunlop T-shirt. For the technical aspect of it, as a technician, he didn't like other mechanics working on his bike. And if you think about it, it kind of makes you faster because you have all that confidence in yourself. You don't have to think about, well, did that guy actually torque my axle right or anything else? You know it was done right because you.
That's the American car guy attitude, isn't it? Is that if you didn't build it yourself, you don't really know what you're doing. They see it as very dilettante to like have a mechanic build the car and then.
Well, yeah, for him, he wanted to do it himself. He was a very good mechanic, and I think that's what made him really faster too.
Well, so that's given us a pivot onto our main topic for the day, right? Which is why I was like, I sort of interrupted. I'm gonna say normal service, but right, it looks as if real road racing in Ireland is over.
No, I don't think so.
And it looks as if it's over on the grounds of insurance. Certainly in 2023, there will not be any road racing. There'll still be the Ulster Grand Prix, the Northwest 200. There'll still be the Isle of Man. But so what, and I guess for me, right, the reason why I wanted to have this round table is that I think that you've seen the beginning of the end for road racing, right? When road racing stops, it will be on the horns of insurance. So in other words, right, when somebody kills a bunch of spectators at the Isle of Man TT, then nobody will want to insure that event, and that will be the end. That's my
Doesn't the Manx government
hypothesis
insure it?
or fear. Well, I'm not sure, right? That's why I'm having this. Like, what do you think?
I met a guy from Isle of Man, and what he said was they're actually they're expecting to grow the number of tourists from 40,000 to 500,000. 500,000 people. to watch that race. That's what they're targeting, right?
Jesus.
But the problem that they're having is majority of the people that are there, the youngest that you're gonna see are all in their 40s. So it's changing. It's mostly like a different generation.
Yeah, which makes the whole like Monster Garage sponsoring, you know, that Richard Rawlings toss pop sponsoring Peter Hickman. That I thought that was a really interesting tie. Gary, you have sort of ethical problems with it as a blood sport nowadays, don't you?
I suppose on the basis that as you get older, you get a bit more sober and reflective about these things. And if you've been watching that sort of sport for a while, you've now got a list of people you supported who are dead. And that's a bit sobering. You know, Dave Jeffries, love Dave Jeffries.
Well, I was going to make funny you say DJ. I was going to mention DJ but even if the Isle of Man events survive, Irish road racing, the old-fashioned the triangle, the town-to-town triangle, where you close the roads and you do it, and you know the local publicans make a lot more money than they otherwise would have done, and you know, Gammy, you've been to, I'm not even going to try and say it properly, Rams, whatever, the circuit in France. I mean, that's the ultimate three-court triangle, three-town triangle. That is what motor racing used to be, you know, for certainly on the continent, right?
You can still drive basically the circuit. It's worth going.
It's the end. It's the end of that though. If we allow Irish road racing to go away, and the other thing is my understanding is the premium was $400,000. Wasn't even that much money in the grand scheme. I mean, in crazy.
Well, yeah, you remember, it's like, you know, I'm sure it's a bit more. It's a super professional sport, and obviously the manufacturer's involved and so forth. But I'm not sure. I would imagine, given that that number is relatively low, the margins are still reasonably tight for those guys running the teams. So just finding an extra whatever $500,000 or whatever it is that you ain't getting back. You know, that's a pretty big hat you're going around with to beg for the extra change, isn't it? So,
well, I mean, it is in terms of like an amateur volunteer sport. It doesn't seem like very much money in terms of how much money, you know, BMW's marketing budget is, or Gas Monkey Garage's marketing budget.
Yeah, but you just said yourself,
like money.
It's old farts like us watching it. You know, if the younger kids aren't watching it, then, and if you look at what are the alternative products at the moment, World Superbikes, where the racing's amazing and no one dies, and MotoGP, where the Ducatis are amazing and generally speaking no one dies. So you know what I mean? There is racing and high thrills action on two wheels if you want it. But I mean, look, yeah, it'll be a shame if its course is up. But it sort of felt like watching the BBC coverage of, you know, stuff like the Cookstown 100 and things like that. That, I mean, they are really nadgery little back roads that they are rinsing those bikes round against grass verges and stuff. You know,
I love
it. Dude, like yeah. I mean, the two pillows they've thrown in front of the 500-year oak tree ain't saving no one. I mean, so
yeah,
that is the risk. I still watch it. I love it. I mean, the guys are heroes, but it's and lasses. There were lasses riding as well, but still.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting in our conversation is that clearly there's a difference between the Manchester United, Chelsea, 49ers, you know, New York Giants of the Isle of Man TT and even the Northwest, and, you know, the local dirt trackness of the Tandragee 100. You're looking at different kinds of, they are different events. And something I thought was interesting in that article that I forwarded, that I'll put a link in the, you know, whatever. In that, what it talked about was how there's a bunch of efficiencies that can be made because, you know, there's still like two bodies that look after road racing in Ireland. There's one for Northern Ireland and one for Southern Ireland. And whilst you can appreciate why that exists, you can see that that makes it much harder to like coordinate efforts together to show the kind of economies of scale that an insurance company might want to see for you to be able to carry on with it. I just feel like, you know, I look for signs for the end of our hobby. You know, I believe that what will take the cars and bikes that we love off the roads is fluids. The fluids will go away first. You won't be able to get tires. You won't be able to get the right oil. That's what really will, and gas will be harder and harder and harder to get. It'll be insurance. We'll take road racing off the road. It'll be insurance. Yeah. It will be administrated. It will be strangled by creeping administration.
Yeah, I think the Isle of Man will survive because it's where it is and the government makes too much money out of it. So unless you get a Le Mans 55, I think it survives.
All right. So let's talk about the difference between riding in England to riding in California to riding in the Philippines.
Sure.
So let's talk about the difference between California and the Philippines first.
So Philippines is it's not really conducive to riding a motorcycle safely. It's some Jeeps specifically will go out of their way to cut you off. So it's you have to be on alert. I think that's the main reason why a lot of like the Irish guys, they talk about, I ask them like, what makes you so comfortable riding in California? Mm-hmm. They're like, in Ireland the roads are shitty. It's all gravel and narrow, and you get used to that, and then you get to California, it's like,
yeah. And just to that, you know, there is a road a couple of hours north of here called Skag Springs,
yeah,
which is, it feels like closed racetrack. It was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. It is wide. It curves from one hillside to another hillside. It goes fucking nowhere. Goes to a bridge, and on the other side of the bridge, the road surface is shitty, and there's a shitty like English B road, like one-way B road, kind of Devon country lane kind of affair, until you get out to the coast, which is like fucking hours from the spot that you are. So there's no traffic on Skag Springs whatsoever. It is the perfect. It's like a closed racetrack, isn't it? It's perfectly.
Well,
smooth.
It kind of depends. If you're coming from Point Stewart,
mm-hmm.
for the first few miles, it's like really shitty road. Like it's what you're describing, single mm-hmm. road. But after that opens up, it becomes a racetrack. Mm-hmm. It's all clean. I was mm-hmm. actually there recently, a couple of weeks ago.
You did Death Valley recently as well, didn't you?
Yeah. The thing about Death Valley is you don't have any reference point. So if you're going fast, it doesn't seem fast because you don't see the rush.
It didn't seem fast, my lord.
Yeah.
I feel like when we were driving on that plane over Alaska, John, and you were looking down at the crevasses, and you're like, is that 50 feet across and 500 feet down? Or is that 500 feet across and 10,000? I couldn't tell you. I just don't know.
We flew up to Mount Denali on these 9-cylinder de Havilland Beavers seaplanes. So you like took off in Fairbanks, and then you flew towards the mountain. The mountain looked big, but really all the proportions were peculiar. You thought the mountain was, normal sized and
20 miles away,
but actually it was fucking huge and
200 miles away.
Yeah, really.
Isn't it like 22,000 or something like that, but up from the floor? Whereas there's a lot of mountain right there. Whereas the ones in the Himalayas, they're taller, but they start from like 15,000 feet, where everything is, if you like. So they're at that location. So, but yeah, it was cool.
When you used to live in LA, did you ever used to ride the canyon roads and
I
out
rode
to the
all
rock
over.
store.
I rode all over. Like you name it in LA. That's why I'm not rich. It's like I'm yeah. I rode all over LA. That's
So
how
are
I met
you?
Tommy and all the other riders.
Oh, okay. You met
Yeah.
them through bikes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So were you? So I used to ride to Panga a lot, which is like north. Which for Marg is, and for the listeners, it's they're breaking down a third wall. Look, it's north from like PCH, north from the Pacific coast, towards 101, like over the ridge of hills, which is separates the San Fernando Valley from
Yeah.
the Los Angeles Valley or
That's
whatever.
where I
I don't
live.
know, mate.
San Fernando, North Hollywood, the
Yeah.
porn capital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dana had a friend whose roommate said to her, "Oh, I have a friend coming over. We're going to make porn. We'll give you $100 to go out to the cinema, or you can stay and join in." And I was like, "Welcome to Los Angeles. Welcome to fucking Los Angeles."
Yeah. I remember when I used to live there, I went to a pet store. I was with my cousin. You met him, Gerald.
Yeah.
I was at a pet store. Or we were in a pet store, and we were looking at this small snake, right? It's like a red-tailed boa. It's like the golden retrievers of snakes, because my cousin wanted to get one, and he was holding the snake, and this one dude is like, "Oh, I always wanted to get one, but my mom didn't really want me to get one. It's this black dude with a hat." And we started chatting. It was like, "Yeah, well, you know what? Sometimes it's better to just get it." It's like, "Yeah, I don't know what my mom's gonna say," and then he leaves, right?
Yeah.
And then my cousin was just, "Do you know who that is?" It's like, "I don't know who that is. That's the porn guy."
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know who that guy is, but
So the porn guy gave advice on snakes. I suppose that's appropriate.
Like,
but it was just like a regular guy. But he was,
yeah.
yeah.
It definitely is the go-to business in the San Fernando Valley, isn't it? It's Angeles Crest. Did you ride that road?
Yeah,
I always rated that road
Yeah,
more than
that was the first time I actually slid going fast. Like I slid right after coming out of a tunnel, and I just picked up the R1 at that time, so I wasn't that used to it, that much power yet. And when you go through a tunnel at a fast pace, there's a crosswind at the end, and that's when I felt it slid.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I told my buddy Tom, "It's like, yeah, man, I felt it." I was like, "Wow, probably a few feet." It's like, "Yeah, man, you kind of have to get used to it." That's what he said. It's like, yeah. But that is a really, really fast, fun ride. Angeles Crest.
Mulholland, too much traffic. All the history, but too much traffic. I have enjoyed Mulholland. I many years ago watched an MMA fight and then drove out along Mulholland late at night, and Mulholland was good. And I saw how it was, years ago when it was the place. But I think Angeles, because it's quiet, it's an asshole to get to because it's quiet in the LA area.
Yeah.
That's probably the best road. And Gammy, if you're in Los Angeles, that road is worth looking out and driving. Not least because it's rather like Topanga Canyon. In that you'll be like, hang on a minute, I've seen that corner in that car advert, like in that Lexus advert. Like, oh yeah, like that's like you can offer it's because all the media companies are in LA, so they're nearby, so they all go to the same spot. So on the theme of the canyon roads, wanted to share this old chestnut with you. You remember I have a CBR 600 race bike that used to be down in LA all the time. I used to ride the canyon roads with Mark. Mark used to have like a 650 XR 650, like a super motarded Baja bike, like a Honda 650, like a beast of a thing. I couldn't kickstart it, but I mean, wheelie machine. They only do about 85 miles an hour flat out. So I would ride the canyon roads with him. One day we're riding, we come around one corner, right, and I'm paying attention because there's a lot of gravel on the road, and I'm not right, and I'm riding very much within myself, right. And on one of the turnouts, there's a chick with a ZX6, a lady, a female rider with a ZX6 parked up at the side, right? And Mark's gotten a long way ahead of me. So as I drop down towards PCH at the end of the road, there is a cop who comes past me at a high rate of knots, and Mark is stopped at the side, is stopped at the corner. So I hop off. Mark has spoken to the cop and said to me, "Did I see anybody pulled over at the side of the road?" And I was like, "Yeah." There was like, and he was like, "How many people?" And I was like, "One." He was like, "Yeah, I thought I only saw one person as well." It was a girl, right? And I was like, "Yeah, with a ZX6." And he went, "Yeah, her husband had a ZX10. They reckon he's gone off the edge."
That's that's unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember riding back along PCH there, thinking, you were right when you saw some gravel on the road, just to pick it up and let Mark get way ahead of you. You were right to just relax. So I'm gonna um um whilst we're talking about riding these canyon roads, when Mark lived up in Topanga, we were on Topanga making our way up towards the house. It was sort of lunchtime, and in that moment, sweeping around a corner, there was maybe 100 yards straight, and at the corner there was like a where the road bore. We'd gone to the left. The road was going to bear to the right. It was as I say, uphill, 100 yards maybe. We'd come out of the turn and we're climbing up the hill. And there's shops over on the left and so on. And then there is a bagger Harley upside down flying through the air, landing on the back of a Volvo station wagon. I mean, landing like in the trunk space of the Volvo station wagon. I mean, and then there's a bloke tumbling. And the next thing I know, we're like at the car park, at the parking lot, and Mark's out of the parking lot and dealing with the guy who miraculously wasn't hurt. It seemed just didn't know how to lean a motorcycle over. He'd just flown in from another part of America and had ridden dirt bikes before, but not a Harley. So we learned this afterwards. A woman came along. I was like there when I was like stood round like a spare part when the woman with the Volvo came out of the supermarket and was like, when there's like a gog when she sees like the Harley has basically merged with quite nice actually previously Volvo 940 wagon. So that's so the upside down Harley, and I have another upside down motorcycle story. Many years ago, Mark, the A4, your stomping ground. So this is a great thing when you're riding in Europe. If they've built a motorway or an auto route or some main highway, especially if it's a toll road, if you ride the roads parallel to it, they're often really quiet, but they're really good sweeping roads. And the A4 parallel to the M4 is one of those. It's a well-known biker road. I used to live not far from it, so I used to be on it quite often. I was riding home one day, and I want to say near Hungerford, but I'm not really sure that it was. And Gammy, you might have heard me tell this story before. Is that I'm on my back of yellow Gixxer, my first bike, approaching a turn. And as I'm approaching a turn, I see a group of bikers standing around. I don't know what it was that made me stop, but I did stop. And they were all, as I pulled over, they were all like looking over above me. And as I got off the bike, I realized there were three guys, but only two bikes. And then I looked over my shoulder, and there in the tree, upside down, was a Honda Fireblade, like a 2002, 2003, like what we'd call in America, 954 blade with the lights that are upside down in the tree, black and yellow in the tree. I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? They're like, we don't know. The bloke's like, they're like, this is the bloke that rode it. I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? He's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm still walking. Like, look, my arms, look. He's like a bit scuffed up, and there's a scuff on his helmet. But he's like, look, he's still like buzzing from being like, this bike is not like, it's like 15 feet off the ground. It's not falling out of the tree. It is in the tree, like in the tree. So there we go. Those are my two upside down bike stories. John, you said you mentioned earlier you work for BMW. We're sitting here looking at one of your Honda CBs. There's 3 more in one of my storage units. I don't know how many you have around your different facilities. CB or BMW? Which and why? What are the pros and cons?
It kind of depends what you're going to do. If you're going to be long distance riding, it's hands down BMW. I mean, they're just, I like them both. It's just depending on what you're going to do. As far as touring, it's hands down BMW just because of all the safety features. All the things that you read on the newspaper. It's like confidence inspiring, ABS, traction control, all those safety features. They do work and they come in handy. But I'd say favorite bike, or just between CB, Honda, or BMW? Favorite bike?
If there could be only one. If you had to get rid of all the CBs and could have only BMWs, or if you had to get rid of all the BMWs and could have only CBs, which would it be?
I'd keep them both. Yeah. Yeah. I can't just have one, John. That's the problem that I have. And thank you for keeping some of the bikes.
All right. Let's do these quick fires and then we can wrap this up. Okay. All right. So quick fire. What was your first bike?
Honda Cub 90. Awesome.
RG250 two-stroke Suzuki.
And 02 GSXR 600. That black and yellow one was the first bike I ever had. What a sensible place to start that was. What was the last bike you bought?
Last. So I'm on a moratorium right now, so it might take some time. I think the last bike I bought was that scooter. I think that was it.
Which scooter?
The one that you have.
The Zuma? That was the last one you bought?
I think so.
What was the last bike you bought? The CBR, Gary?
Yeah. The CBR 600. Yeah.
The last one I bought was the Zuma as well. Oh, no, was the last one I bought? No, the last one I bought was Ollie's CRF.
Yeah.
All right. And the next question. All right. Now, the one that got away. Story of one that got away. Let me tell you the one that got away. The guy on your street that used to do the road racing, Neil.
Yeah.
Neil had a 99 Hayabusa, and I wasn't riding at the time, and I looked at that bike and I was tempted to buy it, even though I wasn't riding at the time. And I wish I'd bought it because he wanted $3,000 for it. And those bikes have just left the building ever since. That was a 99 bike, one of the original ones that could do 200 miles.
I remember that day.
I remember that day. Yeah, that was in the world of motorcycles. I don't have too many that have got away, but that one was one that got away.
For me, it was the Black Bomber in Hawaii, the '64 Black Bomber Honda.
Yeah.
The one I wanted to put in the living room.
Yeah. All right. Best bike you ever owned, Mark?
Probably the CBR, to be honest. It's just brilliant at everything. and really like all top end fizzy. And I know it's like not that much power really by modern bike standards, but it's so lovely handling. It really is. Yeah. Although in my heart, it's probably still the Honda C90. I love that bike. I used to ride that all weathers, snow, farm through shit and all sorts of stuff. We took it dirt tracking. It was amazing.
Best bike you've ever owned, John?
BMW R1200 GS. BMW. I think that's...
Isn't that the one you got rid of because of you associated it with a particular lady friend who didn't quite work out the way you were hoping?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah. But in general, the 1200 GS is just like such a very, very civilized ride. It doesn't make you a hooligan. It's very capable. But it kind of suits my personality. I like the way it rides. It's precise.
Yeah.
And it's a very smooth ride.
Yeah. I think the best bike I own is the $2,000 05 Gixxer 1000 K5 that I have. I think as an all-rounder, there is a reason why people go on and on about them.
Yeah.
And it's because it's got everything that the earlier Gixxers have in terms of the, terrifying license losing, line of cocaine performance. But it's packaged up in a way that you can sit on it and ride it easily, and the fueling works properly, and you can. I used it. I tried to fire up the moped to do a run down to the post office just earlier this week, and the moped wouldn't kick, and I was just like, it's not taxed, and I was like, fuck you.
Really?
Fuck you, Yamaha again, right? I had
visions
of that XS650.
And
I fired up that black Gixxer 1000, and I rode it down there. And you know what, Mark Gammy? This is the first time.
3 gigs for $1. It's going to start up in 3 gigs.
I've got it running since.
Okay.
Right? I'm not taking that bet. I'm just making the point that once again, the Yamaha that I bought in order to have a moped that worked doesn't. And the Gixxer that's done 55,000 miles and so on, I rode it down into the post office and back. I didn't get into third gear. I did take second, but then I decided I preferred the engine braking of first, and so yeah, so that's my favorite bike at the moment. Well, that's my the best bike I've owned. What is the worst? XS is the worst bike I've owned.
I mean, how much time do you guys have? I don't think you want to hear it. Like, I'm a lot. What about you?
Let me.
I don't have that many bikes. I mean, I had a ZX6R, but that was a great bike. I don't think I've ever been faster for £1,500. I mean, it was I think with the slip on, it had 99.8 horsepower. The guy said to me, "We ran it twice on the dyno. We really wanted 100 for you, but it wouldn't get there." I'm like, shit. Yeah.
So 96. It was a bit sit up and beg, wasn't it? But it had a monster exhaust note, and it was in the right green.
Oh yeah, and comfy, man. And it handled pretty well.
Yeah. And that's the thing about that era of bike, is they are significantly more comfortable than we're not Gixxer 750s from that era. They're really bloody uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
lower pegs and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the pegs; it's the handlebars and the whole seating position. Is you feel like you're on a medieval rack with them. All right. Final question. If you could ride like anyone, who would it be? I'll go first. Gary McCoy. I mentioned him before. The way that bloke could slide it, the confidence, the swagger. If I could ride like anyone, it would be Gary McCoy.
I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant. Obviously, I want to ride with... I admire a lot of people who ride a certain way, like Rossi, Dunlop, and all the other racers. But honestly, I want to ride like myself. Like, I don't...
Good answer, John.
Good answer. Anyone else.
Mark?
Oh, I'd pick one of the Dakar boys. Sam Sunderland or someone like that. I mean, on the basis that I think that's such a transferable skill that I don't have any of really at the moment, or at least I mean, if they're up at the Himalaya tops, I'm down in footling around in the foothills. So yeah, I just think that would be a real sort of instant Matrix style download of a skill set. That'd be pretty cool to have that uploaded.
All right. Well, gents, thanks for your time today.
Yeah.
Until the next time.
Cheers.
This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.